Hey everyone, before we get started with today's video, I just wanted to make a quick reminder, or for those who may not have heard, but I have joined the Chilling family, and I want to make sure that you take advantage of the free trial if you haven't yet. The Chilling app is the home of horror with hundreds of scary stories, creepypastas, and true crime, with new ones being added each week. And even better, it's completely ad-free. I'm really happy to be on board, and I hope you all can check it out as well. Download it now and start your free trial today. Click the link in the description below or just simply search Chilling in the App Store. I adamantly refused to ever go camping again. This happened years ago when I was still in my teens, but I can still remember it clear as day. I was loosely a part of the Air Cadets after school. I didn't even have a uniform. They just let me hang out with a friend of mine and take part in some of the events. Since she was always busy with cadets, I wouldn't see her if I didn't go, but I didn't want to join myself. I wasn't the military type. They made you stand at attention and remember ranks. It wasn't for me. I just helped them set up for fundraisers or help clean up the meeting hall as an excuse to see my best friend. And then the camping trip came up. I wasn't really a cadet, but they said if I wanted, that I could come along on the trip. We would need to do things like learn how to build shelters in the woods and first aid survival exercises. We could even take turns going up into a small two-seat plane on the trip. My parents liked the idea of me learning something new, and I liked the idea of sharing a tent with my friend for a weekend. We never got to see each other anymore. Her parents wanted her to be doing a million extra things after work. I swear if she wasn't doing cadets, it would be a part-time job or two after school. The first day went perfectly fine. We all worked together setting up the tents into the camp. After lunch, they broke us into groups to practice building shelters. I think it was for a badge or something like that. Because I wasn't really in the program, they let me just hang out with my friends as long as I didn't help them. I couldn't help even if I wanted to. I didn't even have the basic understanding of outdoor survival. Just being there was slowing them down. So instead, I gathered sticks I thought might be useful for them to use. While I was out on my own, but still had a friend group visible, I noticed some strange scratch marks on some trees. Deep, fresh cuts scarred the bark. I pointed it out, asking if there were any bears around, but they all shook their heads. Everyone was confident there were no large animals in the woods that were dangerous. I gave the marks one last worried look and went back with the group to drag down their progress again. By the end of the night, we were all tired and cold. No one told me that it was going to be this cold out. My friend saw me shivering and let me borrow a sweater. I saw the brief look of hesitation on her face before she handed it to me. Aside from being tired and needing to do all these tasks, I was enjoying myself a little. That was until I accidentally heard the cadets talking when I was coming back from a bathroom break. Why did they even let her come along? One of them asked my friend. My breath caught and I waited for her to stick up for me. She doesn't have anything else to do, and besides, she's not that bad. Not that bad? What did that mean? Did my friend agree with them that I had some bad traits? I mean, I wasn't on the same skill level as the rest of them, but I still thought we could all have fun that weekend. The only way to rescue this trip is to have her do all the chores and keep her busy, while we do what we came here for. This voice sounded a bit nastier than it had any reason to be. I'll see what I can do. That was it then. A good friend of mine was turning on me. I was a burden in everyone's eyes, and I never should have come along. Walking into camp, they all noticed me and shut up really fast. I was given some fake smiles and I played along with it. I shouldn't make them hate me any more than they already did. I just needed to get through that weekend and never come back to hang out with the cadets again. When night fell, we had no set bedtimes, but I only stayed by the fire for a little while. I turned in early to let everyone else chat and talk without me. Inside the tent was so cold. I wish someone told me the weather so I could pack better. After a while, I heard my friend come into the tent silently. I think she knew that I was aware of what they all said earlier, but wanted to pretend that it never happened. That was fine by me. My plan was to pretend that I was fast asleep until I actually was asleep. After a while of silently being curled up in the dark, I came to the horrible realization that I had to pee. That meant getting out of my somewhat warm sleeping bag into the cold. I thought that I heard some rustling of animals outside my tent, but I forced myself to think it was my imagination. I would also risk waking up someone to borrow a flashlight. Because the moon was so bright, I decided on going outside without one. As silently as possible, I got out of the tent, slowly zipping it up behind me. I shuddered in the chill air and started to power walk towards where a porta potty was set up. I didn't want to be out there for any longer than I had to. I knew the path by heart, but everything looked so strange in the dark. I started to doubt about going the right way. I was so focused on staying on the path that I didn't notice strange flickering red lights in front of me. When I did see them in the bushes, I froze. I squinted, trying to get a better look at what I was seeing. All at once, I just knew. They were eyes. Red eyes staring at me from the leaves. Slowly, they started to rise up as if whatever was looking at me was standing, and I ran. I felt a jolt of fear as I stupidly ran off into the woods. I kept running until my lungs burned and I tripped on an exposed root. Only when I had stopped moving, what I just did fully sunk in and I started to feel pathetic. I had gotten lost. Gosh dang it, I was lost in the middle of the woods. I never should have gone on this horrible, good-for-nothing trip. I was just bringing everyone down with me. I haven't given my full effort my entire life, and now I was going to die in the woods because of it. At least I was lost with a bunch of somewhat trained cadets in the area. If I fell and broke my leg, they would know what to do if I was found. If. The idea kept playing in my head. If I was found. People go missing all the times in the woods and they're never seen again. Lost people fall off of cliffs and get eaten by the wildlife, or they starve to death and then get eaten by wildlife, or the wildlife didn't wait for nature to take its course and just eat the hopelessly lost still alive. I didn't have any training. Heck, I couldn't even build a shelter correctly. Unless someone found me, I would die out here. A bit of a jump for someone who was only lost for a short while. But being in the woods in the dead of night, an hour felt like years. Too scared to walk further, I sat against a tree, feeling miserable and so alone in the dark. I rubbed my arms together to try and stay warm. I just needed to last until morning when people could start looking for me. I was with a bunch of people who knew what to do in this situation. Feeling sorry for myself, I sat getting colder by the second, and I heard something that turned my stomach to ice, a yipping off in the distance. I knew coyotes might live in the woods and I did not want to find out. I debated on if it was better to stay put or leave. I didn't want to run across them to get mauled. I needed a plan. After calming down, I decided that I would make a fire. It would keep me warm and maybe the smoke would alert anyone who was looking for me. Getting up, I started looking for a clear space in the dark. The moon was almost full, making it easy to see. I found a small clearing close by and started brushing away leaves the best that I could. I didn't want to set the entire forest ablaze. I knew the idea of how to start a fire, but I had never done it before. Once my spot was decided on, I gathered some rocks circling my clear space, as if it would keep the flames enclosed. Looking around, I started to gather sticks I felt to be dry enough to be useful. With an armful of sticks, I heard a noise, twigs breaking behind me. I don't know why, but I thought it was someone coming to save me. It was a stupid thought. A wild animal was more likely, and that's exactly what it was. When I turned around, I was facing a massive bear just staring at me. Some of my gathered sticks tumbled out of my arms, but otherwise, I didn't move. There was no fight or flight in me. I just froze. My mind turned blank. No advice on how to deal with bears came. I only thought of one thing. I was going to die. Simple as that. It was a shock of how quickly I accepted that fate. I stood unable to move, my breathing shortening until I was taken in quick, painful gasps. The bear started to take some waddling steps towards me, and I still didn't move. When it stood up on its back legs, a few more sticks fell from my arms from how badly my hands were shaking. Tears came to my eyes as I begged my body to do something, no matter how useless that might be. Finally, in the back of my mind, I heard someone telling me if it's a brown bear, you should make a noise. Wait, was that right? What is a black bear noise you make to scare it off? I was useless. I couldn't even remember the dang advice to save my life. I thought of my friends. I really hoped that this bear ate every part of me and I was never found. I didn't want them to come across my body. I saw the bear start to move a paw towards me and I nearly fainted. I jumped when a flurry of motion came from the bushes next to us. A blur came from out of the trees, slamming so hard against the bear that it knocked the thing over. I sat in disbelief. There was nothing that could take on a bear besides another bear. Nothing natural, that is. The spell was finally broken and I darted back, tripping and falling painfully on my backside. Red and fur flew as the bear roared, trying to fight off the attacker. It was being hit by something smaller than it, but it was still losing. My mouth hung open, watching the fight in the dark. The moon came out from behind a cloud and I could get a better look at what had accidentally come to my rescue. I didn't believe it. I just couldn't. The beast raised a head and I could see it clearly. A wolf's head swiftly moving to bite down into the bear's throat. I was watching a fight between a bear and a werewolf. There was no other way to say it. The wolf's body was human-like, covered in dark black fur. Muscles rippled under the fur, powerful enough to take on something as strong as a bear. A long tail thrashed around in the fight. The back claws looked wolf-like, but the front was almost like human hands but with razor-sharp nails gripping onto the brown fur. It dug in fingers deep into the bear's flesh, red seeping out in both creatures screaming. I should have run for it. I had no business being there, and yet my body was still frozen by fear. If the bear somehow won, it might eat me after it finished off the werewolf. If the werewolf won, it would eat me for sure. I was a tasty little dessert for either of these two. I could only hope that they took each other out. I heard a horrible cracking sound and one last grunt from the bear as the werewolf tightened its jaws deeply into the bear's neck. The massive brown animal fell still, and the wolf kept its jaws clamped down, breathing heavily. I watched amazed as the claw marks and wounds from the fight started to heal on the wolf's body. In a few minutes they had all closed up, making it look good as new. Releasing its jaw, it stood up on strong back legs, head pointed up in the air. The wolf let out a victory howl so loud, it rattled my bones. To my horror, I heard more howling answering back in the distance. There were more of these creatures in the woods. After it finished howling, it turned its head and red eyes and found me. Slowly, it faced me only a few feet away. I was still shaking, but not as much as before. "Thank you." My voice was so low and trembling that I could barely hear myself. Large ears twitched in my voice. I couldn't tell what kind of expression it had aside from scary. Looking from between me and the bear, it made a choice. Getting on all fours, it took the bear by the neck once again, and started to drag it into the woods, disappearing with its meal. I watched it leave, but the relief didn't hit me until the sun started to rise. I sat, staring at the spot that I had last seen the wolf as the sky started to lighten up. When my campmates finally did find me, they were all in a panic. Our adult supervisors were going to call in some professionals, but they came across me within an hour of my best friend noticing me missing. It was a little embarrassing getting lost so close to camp. They were all glad that I had stayed put and didn't keep going further into the woods, making it nearly impossible for them to find me. I never told them why I was so scared into staying in the same spot for most of the night. Until this point, I haven't told anyone what I saw. I soon fell out of touch with my best friend that I went on that trip to see. Our lives just became too different. Because of that one camping trip, I became a city person and refused to ever go into the woods again.